The cowboy whispered to the widow, "I'd give 10 herds for one night in your arms. They told you the Wild West was only about dust, gunsmoke and gold, but they never told you about the lonely hearts, the whispered promises under a dying sun, or the desperate bargains struck between love and survival. If you're reading this, don't look away, because this story of a cowboy and a widow will make you question what's worth more: 10 herds of cattle, or a single night in arms that feel like home. And if you find yourself caught in the fire of this tale, make sure you don't miss what comes next. Subscribe, follow, stay, because stories like this aren't told twice in a lifetime. The wind carried the scent of dust and loneliness through the small frontier town of Red Creek as the widow Eleanor Harper adjusted her black veil, her eyes set firmly on the ground while whispers followed her every step. For folks knew she had buried her husband just 3 weeks ago, a man both feared and despised for his cruelty, leaving behind not only acres of dry land, but also a woman too proud to beg and too scarred to love. The saloon doors swung open with a creak as a tall cowboy in a weathered hat, broad-shouldered and sunburned from years on the range, stepped out, his spurs clinking like small bells of fate. And when his gaze met hers across the dusty street, something unspoken passed between them. Not desire, not comfort, but recognition, 2 souls carrying burdens too heavy for the world to ever understand. She tried to look away, but he closed the distance with slow, deliberate steps, stopping just at the edge of her grief, his voice low and steady as he whispered words that made her heart stumble. "Ma'am, I ain't here for your land or your name or your past. I'm here because I reckon a woman like you deserves to know there's still kindness in this world." And though she clenched her fists against the trembling that threatened to undo her composure, she found herself staring into eyes that promised no lies, no pity, only an unvarnished truth. It was then, as the train's whistle blew in the distance, that she realized her story was far from over. And this stranger, this cowboy, was about to turn her life into a tale the town of Red Creek would never forget. That evening, the widow sat alone on her porch, the lantern casting a dim glow over weathered wood, while the sound of coyotes echoed from the hills. And though her heart told her to keep distance from the stranger, her eyes searched the horizon for him, as if drawn by something she couldn't name. And sure enough, the cowboy appeared, leading his horse with a slow grace, stopping just beyond her fence, where shadows met starlight. His presence neither threatening nor timid, but steady like the earth itself. He tipped his hat and spoke of the herd he'd been trailing, of storms that nearly broke him, of nights colder than death. And though his words were plain, his voice carried warmth she hadn't known since girlhood, stirring memories she thought long buried. She answered in fragments, cautious yet curious, until silence grew between them, a silence heavy but not empty, broken only when he leaned closer, eyes locked on hers, and whispered with a gentleness that startled her, "I'd give 10 herds just to sit here one more night and hear you breathe." And though she tried to steel herself against the rush in her chest, Eleanor knew the walls around her grief had already begun to crack. The next day the town buzzed with whispers as Eleanor walked through the market. Her head held high, though her heart carried a storm. For eyes followed her every move, judging, suspecting, already weaving stories of her and the cowboy who had lingered by her porch. When she turned a corner, she found him there again, leaning against a post with that same calm steadiness. But before she could speak, the sheriff appeared, his gaze sharp and voice cold as he warned the cowboy to stay away from the widow's land, hinting that trouble was coming, that Eleanor's late husband had left debts and enemies behind. The cowboy didn't flinch, only replied with a slow drawl that he wasn't after land or gold. And in that moment, Eleanor realized he meant every word he had whispered to her. Yet she also knew the danger circling them was real. And as the sheriff walked away, leaving dust and suspicion in his wake, she felt the weight of a choice pressing hard against her chest, whether to cling to her grief and safety, or to step into the unknown with a man willing to risk everything just to stand by her side. Night fell heavy over Red Creek as storm clouds gathered, And in the dim glow of the saloon lanterns, the widow found herself face to face with the truth she had long feared. Her late husband's debt collectors had come to claim her land. Rough men with cold eyes and faster guns. But before they could lay a hand on her, the cowboy stepped forward, steady as a mountain, his hand resting near his holster as he declared that she was under his protection. Tension crackled like lightning, the room frozen until one man drew too quick, and in the blur of a heartbeat the cowboy's revolver thundered, scattering the gang like frightened cattle. When the dust settled, silence reigned, broken only by Eleanor's trembling breath as she realized the fight for her freedom had ended, not with her surrender, but with his courage. And when he turned to her, tipping his hat with a faint smile, he whispered once more the vow that had first shaken her heart. "I'd give 10 herds for just one night in your arms," and though tears burned her eyes, she finally stepped into him, choosing love over fear as the storm broke outside, carrying away the last of her sorrow into the endless western night.